go to the second point, which also belongs to the recent discoveries of Seventh-day Adventist theologians. And this is the beginning at the end and the end of this prophecy of 2,300 years. There were many questions concerning the beginning. Is this 457 BC, or maybe it is 458 BC as the date for the beginning of this prophecy? I don't remember exactly, but maybe in the last 20, 30 years, there was discovery of the so-called Elephantine papyri, or papyrus. In that papyrus, it was confirmed that the time of the decree of the King Artaxerxes was not in minus 458, as some suggested, but it is 457, as Adventist pioneers claimed. But even more important, what was discovered in the last several years is the following point. And it was basically discovered by Jacques Ducan. And here what Ducan discovered, he counted carefully using different calendars, and he went back and he discovered that minus 457 is the Jubilee year and not any other year. And he also found out that the end of the prophecy of 2,300 years, it means the year 1844, is also a Jubilee year. I think it is an extremely important discovery. Extremely important discovery. William Shea, a very good expert and theologian, he found out that the year 4 minus 457, the beginning of the prophecy, was the Day of Atonement. And he also found out that the 22nd of October, 1844, is the Day of Atonement. So there are these two discoveries by Jacques Ducan and Bill Shea. It gave great credibility to Adventist teaching. Then in 1844, we have something special that began in heaven. Because Daniel 8:14 is an answer to verse 13. And if we miss it, we are missing everything. And here is what, let me read one more time, verse 13, Daniel 8:13. It says, so there are three issues. Let me go one issue after another issue. The issue of Tamid. So if you would be doing the good thing, we need to go verse by verse in chapter 8, but let me tell you that it says in chapter 8, verse 11, and there is a struggle between the little horn and the prince of the host. Probably you know this. And it says, it set itself up to be as great as the prince of the host. It took away the daily sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was brought low. Are you with me? What this power, religious power will do, it will, according to this prophecy, set itself up to be as great as the prince of the host. And who is the prince of the host? Jesus. So that power will set itself up to be equal with Jesus. It took away the daily sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was brought low. And of course, I think most of you know what this prophecy is talking about, that for many centuries, especially during the Middle Ages, this power, religious power, which considered itself a substitute for the services in the heavenly sanctuary, it took away from God, from Jesus, the tamid, the daily sacrifice. So, to put it more bluntly and clearly, you did not have to go to the heavenly sanctuary in order to obtain the forgiveness for your sins anymore. This is what I was talking about this morning. You did not need to go to the... You could have had it in the church. If you have enough money, you go to the church and you can get your forgiveness. So when two heavenly beings are talking to each other, and one heavenly being is asking another, how long it will take for the Tamid to be restored? Then the prophecy says, up to 2,300 evenings and mornings or years, and the Tamid will be restored. So the key word here, let me now try to write on this small board. I think that most of you cannot see, but I have to do this in order to make it clear. So the word which is in the middle of this discussion is the Hebrew word nitzdak. And the prophecy in the book of Daniel says that little horn power will take Tamid from the prince of the host. But the prophecy says in 2,300 years, the sanctuary will be nitzdak. It will be, the Tamid will be set right or restored. First time in the history, Adventists began to speak in the middle of 19th century that there is a ministry of Jesus in the heavenly sanctuary, and that people do not need to go for the forgiveness to the priest, but they can go directly to the heavenly sanctuary. So I believe that by the preaching of Adventist Church in the middle of 19th century, the Tamid was restored. There is a second meaning of this nitzdak, and this is to cleanse. So the second problem mentioned by one heavenly being to the other heavenly being is the rebellion. I'm reading from verse 13. The rebellion that causes desolation. The rebellion that causes desolation. It means there is a destructive power in human society which causes desolation, destruction. So sin is a destructive power. It destroys individual, it destroys the planet, it destroys the universe. And I think this statement here in the great book of Daniel is so contemporary. It says, what will happen to the rebellion that causes desolation? What is going to happen with the problem of sin in the universe? And the sin mentioned here is not only the sin of the people of God, this is the sin of the little horn too. So another human being, another heavenly being replies, up to the 2,300 years, the sanctuary will be nitzdak, cleansed. Or we can say it is the beginning of the cleansing. So we believe at the beginning there is investigative judgment. I'll say about this a few words later. And then, of course, after that follows another executive judgment. So the third meaning, if you are more interested, I can give you other biblical texts where the word nitzdak is used in this sense, and also in sense 3, and this is to vindicate. Vindicate. And here Daniel is saying that for centuries the name of God was trampled down. It was what people were telling about God throughout the centuries. There are huge accusations against the name of God. But in this prophecy, the text says, up to 2,300 years, the name of God will be vindicated. To come back to my question, that this is so relevant, I think you can take this and go to the public hall and explain also to the non-Adventists. I think they would understand this. For example, to the Psalms again, beautiful Psalms. It seems that we find something else. Do you know what we find? We find that David says, the God is coming to judge the earth. So because God is coming to judge the earth, let the whole earth rejoice. Oh, of course. But even more shocking is When he says, for example, in Psalm I think 51, he says, "Come up, O Lord, judge me. Hurry up, hurry up. I cannot wait for you to judge me." Oh. Murder, adulterer, to mention just... So David knew that Jesus is our substitute. But if it is not enough for you, if you are still in the state of angst, in the state of Christian unhappiness, let's mention the second point. Jesus is not only our substitute, but Jesus is also our advocate. Is it in the Bible? Where is it in the Bible? Yes, yes. Jesus is our substitute. He is our advocate. He is the key witness. And he is also the judge himself. Then why there is a judgment? This is another story I would need to go through the Bible. But it has to do probably with the vindication of the name of God, with the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary. The problem sin problem is not only the problem of this planet. And how do we know this? Because the key chapter about investigative judgment is Daniel chapter 7. And when Daniel 7 speaks about investigative judgment, it says that this judgment is in favor of the saints. You know this? It is in favor of the saints, of the people of God. So these points are very important. So sometimes it was said that we Adventists are just inventing this investigative judgment. But even non-Adventist theologians, they found out this judicial pattern which is found already in Genesis. Read you the questions where God investigates. And then when I read these questions that you know, I want to ask you, does God know the answer to these questions? Yes, he knows. Then why he's asking them? Listen the questions. Genesis 3, verse 9. Where are you? Verse 11. Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat? What is that you have done? Does God know answer to these questions? Yes. Why he's asking these questions? Because this is a judicial procedure. But probably the essence is found here. Because it is, and then once he asked the questions, there comes the verdict. So the Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed you are. Verse 16, to the woman said, it will greatly increase, and so on. To Adam. So there is first some kind of investigation, and then comes the verdict. Let me go to the next chapter. Chapter 4, Genesis 4. You have the same judicial procedure that theologians have found out in the case of Cain and Abel. In Genesis 4, verse 6 says, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not what is right, sin is couching at your door. Questions. And then another. Where is your brother Abel? And then verse 10. What have you done? This is the echo of chapter 3. So there are questions, investigation. And God knows the answer. But probably because of the inhabitants of the whole universe, he is investigating. Because he has, when it comes to the whole world, he has to declare some people righteous who are sinful. And that's why I think he investigates. And then, once he asked all these questions, in verse 11 comes the verdict. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, and so on and so on and so on. Read further the book of Ezekiel. We find out what is going on. Where is God going to? Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 16. He then brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord. And there, at the entrance of the temple, between the portico and altar, were the 25 men, with their backs toward the temple, and the Lord and their faces toward the east. They were bowing down to the sun in the east. So where was God going? To the sanctuary. And he saw people worshiping sun. And then the key chapter is, of course, Daniel chapter 7. I'm not going to read just one point from chapter 7 when it comes to the investigative judgment. Daniel chapter 7. And it is verse 8. It speaks about a little horn. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, and so on and so on. The three of the first horns were uprooted, and so on and so on. The court was seated, and the books were opened. But do you know what is important here? There is a movement here. From chapter 2 to, verse 2 to verse 8, earth. Then from verse 9, 11, heaven. Then again 11 and 12, earth. And then 13 and 14, heaven. So there is movement. Earth, heaven, earth, heaven. But what is important here is, while little horn was doing his activities on earth, there was a court going on in heaven. This is what comes out grammatically from this text. Are you with me? While little horn, and you know who is little horn, whatever Christianity or other religions which apostatized, as they were doing their activities at the same time, because the text says, as I looked, the thrones were set in place, the court was sitting. So there are two parallel activities. There is court in heaven, and there is activities of the little horn on earth. And I think this is very important. I'll stop here, and then we can continue further discussing these issues.